Brookfield is pleased to partner with The Urbanist on Monocle Radio. Brookfield manages real estate around the globe, collaborating with partners, tenants and local communities to bring Brookfield's properties to life. Being part of the wider Brookfield ecosystem affords access to data and expertise across a breadth of industries, in addition to access to capital. A leading portfolio of real estate, with a proven record of adding value beyond the buildings. Success built on relentless innovation, leading-edge sustainability, and the highest standards of design. The creation of places that enhance the very fabric of our communities. Brookfield, real estate reimagined.
Hello and welcome to The Urbanist, Monocle's programme all about the built environment. I'm your host, Andrew Tuck. Coming up, we jump in, literally, to the inaugural Swimmable Cities Summit, taking place in Rijnhaven, Rotterdam. Assembled by the Swimmable Cities Alliance, this meeting of minds aimed to support the growth of a global grassroots movement for transforming urban waterways. In this episode, we hear from activists, athletes, enthusiasts and officials to find out how swimmability is an indicator of good quality of life, biodiversity, resilience, and also a sign of a healthy city too. On the ground to dip in more than just a toe into the conversation was Monocle's Carlotta Rebello. And we hand over to her now for this episode of The Urbanist.
Over the past decade of making The Urbanist, I've attended my fair share of conferences. But this week in Rotterdam was the first time that, before doing anything else, attendees, speakers and organisers were stripping down next to each other. No, it wasn't that kind of event, but rather the inaugural Swimmable Cities Summit, which began with an opening splash in the Rijnhaven. This is one of the city's oldest ports, located on the new Maas River, and it shows how a city can tackle its industrial past head-on and transform it into a floating public square accessible to all. How's the water?
It's perfect. I love it so much.
Do you swim often in your city? Where are you from?
I'm from Paraguay. I used to swim a lot in Paraguay. It's the first time I'm doing this in Rotterdam. I'm very happy.
It hydrates the imagination. It's beautiful. All of my worries, all of my stresses have gone. Every conference should start with a splash, because when I come around the corner, I can see a wave of just beautiful people ready to connect with water, and it just made me feel great.
It is surprisingly warm, and I'm so amazed because I used to live in Rotterdam, and back then no one was swimming here, and I'm like, what happened?
Over 3 days, some 200 people from 30 different nations came together to discuss how swimmability leads to better quality of life and greater cities. The principle behind the movement is simple. Everyone should have a right to swim in their cities, either by cleaning up existing waterways or by creating new ones, such as an open-air swimming pool or a sauna. In doing so, a city will ultimately become more resilient, healthier and equitable, ensuring the well-being of future generations.
This is the world's first Swimmable Cities Summit.
The summit is a work of the Swimmable Cities Alliance, a grassroots global movement for swimmable waterways, which currently has 153 signatories under its belt. At the helm of it all is co-founder Matt Sykes. Matt, how's the water?
The water's amazing, but the expression on people's faces is also incredible. We just had like 180 people jump in the water together, local kids that are playing here, and all about connecting with waterways. I mean, it's been incredible to see all of these people come from over 70 cities and 20 countries around the world just for this event. We've been doing so much work, but to see it come off and to see expressions on people's faces, this is only the beginning, so who knows where it's going to go.
As attendees one by one left the water, it was clear that any previous inhibitions had been washed off their faces and bonds had started to form. We are off to a great start. So I've heard you're from Rotterdam and this is the first time you're swimming in your own city?
Yeah, it is.
Why did it take so long?
Bit scared of cold water.
How did it feel then?
It's actually really nice to swim in. The temperature is wow.
So you'll be coming back without the support of the Swimmable Cities Summit?
Most probably, yes, I will. But I will stimulate my colleagues in the office, which is only 100 meters from here, to get a swim in their lunch break.
A few hours into the summit, and an idea started floating around. Could swimmability actually be an indicator of quality of life and urban livability? It certainly seemed to be the case here in the host city of Rotterdam, as Vice Mayor Pascal Lansik-Bastemeyer explained.
We should be, because 1/3 of our city contains of water. So we are used to living with water. 80% of our city is below sea level. So all the years we are here in Rotterdam, we just live with water, and we really want to give it a boost as well, because the last couple of decades we used the water for industrial motives, for logistics and boats, and the last years we are really thinking of retaking the rivers and canals to bring some recreational purposes to the rivers and canals as well.
And it is an interesting story, I guess, with the Netherlands, a country that, because of the challenges it has with being under water level and the amazing technology and engineering in terms of flood defenses, and now seeing how this relates to actually using the water as a benefit to the community. Basically, I'm asking about the mentality shift that seems to be happening where, water is not an enemy to defend, but actually to embrace.
Yeah, well, it's never been an enemy of Rotterdam or Holland at large, because we couldn't exist without the efforts we take to make this city livable and swimmable. Because if we don't take measures in case of climate adaptation, water quality, etc., we wouldn't exist as a country. So it's in our hearts. We are a delta city and a delta country.
And of course, we know that this is a work in progress. What is your goal and your vision for where Rotterdam is going when it comes to swimmability?
At this time, for our 2 big rivers, we are making some urban development plans for water. So that's unique, I think, in Holland, but I think it's unique in the whole wide world as well. So it's not a river in a bigger urban development plan. No, we have urban development plans for water. And we have one for the Maas, our biggest river, and we are making one for the Rotte as well. And one of my biggest dreams will be to swim in the Rotte as well, because the water quality is not that good in the Rotte, but we will take effort to make it happen the next couple of years, that people can swim in our name-giving river, because the Rotte gives a name to Rotterdam.
It's interesting to see the trickle-down effect that one small action can have. The Swimmable Cities Alliance was launched last year in the lead-up to the Paris Olympics, inspired and bolstered by Mayor Anne Hidalgo's decision to clean up the River Seine. Olympian Toby Robinson was one of the very first people to swim in a cleaned-up Seine, as he represented Team GB at last year's Games. I asked what that experience was like for him.
I was getting asked a lot in the lead up to the Olympics about what I thought about swimming in the river. A lot of the triathletes and the other open water swimmers were getting asked, and they were being quite negative about it. They were like, it's a risk to our health. I started to see it as a really defining moment for the city of Paris and for the movement of swimmable cities and clean water. So I started speaking about the positive nature this can have and the lessons other cities can learn from the journey that Paris has gone through to clean up their river.
You really brought home that idea in the session in the morning of the power that sports can have in this conversation of cities pushing for clean, swimmable waters. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Sport has a lot of political power in every aspect. Paris's legacy was swimmable waterways, but if you look back at London and Rio, they used their Olympics to regenerate poorer areas of the city. A lot of other Olympic athletes use their platform to talk about political issues that are close to them. I want to use my platform to talk about what we can do to clean up our waterways in other urban environments.
And that ambition, you're trying to bring that to London by organising also swimming in the River Thames. We know that the conversation in London has been difficult. There's been ambition to transform the river, but for one reason or another, things get in the way. Yeah. Are you hopeful that, we will see a clean river in London in the near future?
I'm very hopeful. There are a lot of positive things happening. Only a few months ago, the Thames Tideway Tunnel opened, which is a whole new sewer system that is capturing a lot more wastewater than previous. And I think these positive stories need to be spoken about more. A lot of media focus really on the negative aspects, but there are so many positive stories out there happening. We've been in the conference today and we've heard amazing stories about Basel and Rotterdam and Paris. I hope to be back here in a few years talking about how London has gone through that transformation.
And how different was it for you as an athlete to do that competition in a river like the Seine versus if it was, in an indoor or a more controlled environment? Because I'm curious about the freedom that gives you as well to be, surrounded by the city, in the middle of the city while competing in the Olympics.
It's part of why I love open water swimming rather than pool swimming. Pools are the same everywhere, whereas when you swim open water, you've always got unique experiences. My unique experience in Paris was to deal with the current. I've never swam in a river that has so much current as the Seine did. We were going one way and we were flying like we had a motor on. And then we turned against the current and it was like we put a parachute on and we were wearing jeans. And that's why I love swimming in the open water, because all around the world, environments are so different. And it's a new way to engage with a city. Seeing Paris from the middle of the Seine when you're in the water was such a unique and iconic experience. And that will live with me forever.
You are organising Swimming in the Seine. Tell us about that initiative, when it's happening and what's the goal there.
I just want to take the legacy from the Paris Games. They've shown that a clean-up of a major river that goes through a major western city can be done. I want to bring that legacy and show that it can be done in the Thames as well. I'll be organising a relay race from the source to Westminster this summer, 280 kilometres, and we'll do that over 3 days. And hopefully we can shine a light on the issues that the Thames face, but also the positive stories that are happening now.
Across the pond in New York, the team behind Plus Pool has been hard at work to show that it is possible to swim in New York's waters. What began as an idea for a water-filtering floating swimming pool has evolved into a movement to restore the utility of New York's waterways. Cara Meyer is Plus Pool's managing director, and she told me about where they are now, a decade into its launch.
I think Plus Pool was one of the early visions in contemporary modern urban swimming, and the designers of Plus Pool really just captured so many people's imagination with this idea. I think that it's an iconic image that people around the world just really responded to, that helped us launch a movement to reclaim waters in New York and subsequently around the world. There's been a lot of partnerships with some of the people here today over the last 10 years. We were swimming in Basel, Switzerland in 2019 with some of these folks and at an urban swimming symposium. And now here at the inaugural launch of Swimmable Cities, it's really exciting and powerful. I think in terms of where we are and what we're doing in New York, one of the unique challenges that we've had is that there was no existing regulatory structure for what we were doing. I think a lot of cities share this. Regular access to our waters for swimming is currently prohibited, and so we had to ignite a lot of policy change and regulatory changes in the ways in which the city approaches public access to our waters, the city and the state. And so we've done that over years of grassroots advocacy and lots of conversations with various agencies across the city and the state. We've now been able to ignite that, and so it's going to help facilitate the construction of this idea that captured so many people's attention and love and kept us working for so many years. But it's also hopefully going to open up more public access to the waters across New York State for other projects like it or similar or like-minded or any kind of public access for swimming, because there's now a framework and a pathway to do so. And I'll be speaking a little bit about that at the summit tomorrow.
New York falls victim of an issue that other cities, like where we're based in London, also falls victim to, which is mentality. One thing is to get the framework and the regulations in place, but then there's the whole other side of actually convincing the public that you can swim in the rivers in your city. Do you think that New Yorkers understand that message, or that is that the next step to help people understand that access to water is possible?
Yeah, I think in large part they do, and we've come a long way since this initial idea. I mean, the idea first was really about filtration and to improve the water quality. And our nonprofit organization, which we launched to develop the project, has spent a lot of time doing programming and education around water quality and what that means, and not just making sure that the water itself is safe for public access, but also making sure people know how to be safe around water safety education, swimming, learning to swim for particularly people who don't have access to those lessons. And so the benefit of having to take a long time on the regulation and convincing the politicians and moving structures and systems and policies is that we've had a decade of sharing this opportunity and this idea with the New York public. And I don't think everyone's there yet by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of people have joined this movement, and there's thousands of people that helped us get to the point that we could ignite this regulation because, they signed our petitions, they showed up at events, they testified before the city council, they testified before the Department of Environmental Conservation, and they said, hey, we want access to our rivers. No one owns the water except for us citizens, and we want access to them, and we want to do that with Plus Pool, and we believe that it's safe. There's been advanced engineering, process controls, and things that we can do now that we couldn't do 100 years ago to make it safe. So let's just dive in.
Let's talk about the engineering behind it. You mentioned earlier the filtration. So tell us about the engineering feat that it is to get Plus Pool off the ground and what's behind it.
I should start by saying the waters around New York City have been greatly improved, and on the average day, the water quality is safe for public access. Our system combats that on a regular basis. Anytime there's fluctuations in water quality, I think it also makes for a bit of a pleasant experience, particularly for people who are not used to more turbid waters or things like that. But it's pretty amazing and incredible that after all this time and iterations of really what was just an idea, it's stayed true to that idea in that there's 3 layers of filtration. There's a 200 micron strainer that keeps things away from the filters, and then an ultrafiltrations process made of a series of membranes that does a lot of the work, and then an ultraviolet light disinfection to achieve what's called a 4-log reduction in viruses. We've filtered water into the pool facility that's taking the source water, the East River water, and bringing it to a standard that is suitable for swimming upon intake, right? But then also we get in and bathers are get in, and so we're engineering and modeling a way in which the water can turn over, constantly refreshing the water so that even though it's contained and protecting people from the currents, it's constantly being rejuvenated, so to speak. And that also is allowing us to discharge the clean water that we've filtered back to the source. So we're kind of what I've been saying is off-grid for water, so to speak.
But what if your city doesn't have any waterways running through them? Well, that's where the work of groups such as Pool is Cool come in. Starting off as an independent citizens group, its aim was to reintroduce outdoor swimming to the city of Brussels, eventually culminating in the opening of Flow, the group's first outdoor public pool. Here's Paul Steinbrook, Pool is Cool's co-founder, on what prompted the start of the movement.
There's one word: frustration. It was something that a couple of people realized independently, that we all came from somewhere else to Brussels, within Belgium, but also most of us from somewhere from Europe. And after living a while, a couple of years, you realize, wait a second, something's missing. It's hot outside, let's go for a swim, but there's no place to go for a swim. And this might lead some people to a nagging outcry, but we and the people we met then, via friends and friends of friends, were all mostly having a background in architecture urbanism, so we knew a bit better how cities develop, who are the key stakeholders, what are the processes. So we immediately thought, no, wait a second, we don't just want to complain, we want to do something about it with our personal expertise and background. And that's how Pool is Cool started as a group. Organization came later, it was first more just a group, to think about how can we, with a positive attitude, with a positive story, imagining how fantastic it would be if there were swimming places or outdoor swimming in general. Start a change, both societal change but also political change, so that these places will be realized eventually and Brussels will become an outdoor swimming city. And naively as we were, we thought, okay, knowing how we do it with architecture projects, we make some nice drawings and images and find a couple of interesting reference projects all around the world. We present it to politicians and all of a sudden they are convinced and build the places. That's not how it went, what we quickly had to realize. And then the approach was developed that, okay, no, we really need to be the ones that have the answers, look for the answers, communicate the answers, but also do the first steps in developing and realizing places. So over the course of the past 10 years, we went from short actions and little projects up to Flow, the outdoor swimming pool that we managed for a couple of years lately.
Tell us about Flow, because that was essentially the culmination of a lot of this work on finally delivering to the city open-air swimming pool. Now, Flow has just closed, and you've said that it was always intended to be a temporary solution, but one that showed the potential of this idea, that showed the importance of having these sort of spaces. Tell us about Flow, how it worked, and I guess what 4.5 years of having it running really taught the city and the community about spaces like this.
Flow was meant to be temporary, and the intention was that we buy some time for the politicians to properly develop the real places, because we knew this will take years, and to bridge basically the gap from the moment that everyone understands it's necessary until it's actually realized, bridge the gap with a small infrastructure. That in parallel allows us, but also everyone involved and politicians who are interested or administrations, to make experiences and also to experiment, which is easier for us as a non-profit than as if a public authority would build something. We can experiment, we can allow ourselves some failures and mistakes for the bigger goal of gaining knowledge and experience. So that was the ambition for Flow, to realize after a couple of other projects before that were shorter and smaller in scale, now we really want a real swimming pool. So Flow could be seen as a prototype and almost a scale model of a real pool. It was small, it was some 17 by 8 meters, but it had all the ingredients that a real pool has. So you have, of course, the practical functions like changing rooms and sanitary spaces, but also sun decks and kiosk bar, also the whole management system with reservations and tickets. In order to test on a small scale what it would be and what it takes to run a place and find answers on the questions that we were faced. So, can you do it securely? How do you deal with problematic youth, for example? Are the people actually interested? Isn't it raining all the time in Brussels? What do you do in winter with it? Who needs a place that is only open 3 months a year? And we thought these are all interesting questions, and the only way to properly answer them is simply to have a pool. So, for example, with the water treatment technology, we started very classically with a chlorinated pool. Then the legislation got changed, natural purification became available, so we did this, and so we had the first natural pool in Brussels, and we've shown that this is a system that works. We involved the youth of Brussels both in making and running the place in order to create a co-ownership that prevents this place from getting vandalized, problems that occur often with public infrastructure that is put in place without the proper participation or outreach to these communities.
One topic that keeps coming up again and again here at the summit is that idea of ownership and people feeling proud of their city and feeling like they are stewards of the public space. And you brought in the community, the youth community, to Flow to help them be part of this story. Can you share that story too?
Indeed. In general, outdoor swimming has quite a bad reputation in Belgium because the only moment when it's in the news is when there have been again troubles and fights at the beach or at one or the other lake or swimming pool elsewhere in Belgium. This might be just a small fraction of days and moments when this actually happens, but it takes up all the media attention. We cannot excuse ourselves. Also, we were afraid and we weren't sure how the youth of Brussels would react on something like this if it's simply dropped in their neighborhood and all of a sudden all the fancy people from the European area would come in. How the heck would they feel comfortable or welcome in this place? We were aware of this and we teamed up with people and partners, organizations that have experience with these people, both in building, realizing places, but also in managing and giving them work. And I think this was the key factor that we involved them in making the place. They built it. They got simple tasks to build with wood, some elements, balustrades, for example. After a half hour of introduction, they already could introduce their friends to do the same. So they became already mini ambassadors, teachers. And on the long run, whenever they come visit to the pool with their family or friends, they can say, look, this is the balustrade I made. So this is in a way also my pool. And this was then extended in the management of the place. So we specifically reached out to local youth houses so that they reach out to their people, telling them we need people to run the place. A summer job, basically, a student job. And they did it fantastically, and they had no idea what it means in the first year, but in the second year, some of them already became the trainers of the new generation, so to say. And this was a really empowering thing for some of them that made them the pool ambassadors again. This was also in the other direction important, because by having these young people from neighborhoods involved in managing the pool, also those who come to visit see, look, my friends or people like me are working there. And this, I think, was the key factor to make it a successful place, that both invited the general audience and the hipsters and whoever, the students, the families, because it was also the only outdoor swimming place. And at the same time was inviting to the local neighborhood and made it their local pool.
And finally, we head to South Africa to hear about another citizen-led initiative, this time to rehabilitate the Jukskei River, which runs through Johannesburg. Here, it's not just a matter of cleaning up the waterway from debris or waste, but also about unlocking the actual access to it, as the director of Water for the Future, Romy Stander, explained.
I started the foundation with the environmental artist Hanneli Kutsia over 8 years ago, and it's really a rabbit hole that we went down. My background is interior design. I had no ecological or rehabilitation background, and I started from a point where I just made sure to always collaborate with the experts. So from really early on, I pursued an old gentleman who was wheelchair bound, who was known as the chairman of this Jukskei River that daylights in Johannesburg from the CBD. And he just mentored me for many years, putting together a panel of experts. And what he explained was, because this river is this living, breathing entity, there's where do you actually start from? So there's obviously data that exists with the city's records, the municipality records, but we needed to start from a secure base, and that was why he put together this panel of experts, hydrologists, engineers, alien invasive experts, aquatic ecologists, you name it. And so I could then commission those reports thanks to seed funding that I got from the founders of Nando's, because where this river daylights happens to be just behind the head office of Nando's in Johannesburg. And I always say to people, the reason that people even care about this river, or the organization has snowballed to it is today, is because of these key landowners at this point, and how then the parcels of lands goes on further along over the 5 pilot blocks that have proved concept over the years.
Now, the rehabilitation project is a tough one, because you were talking here about pollution. Tell us about where in the process we are and paint a picture for us.
In those early days, like I explained, I focused heavily on the data and the science and the research. But obviously we needed to start somewhere, and the only way we could really start getting our hands dirty as such was with an alien invasive removal program. And then obviously you needed human hands, manual labor. And so I was very lucky, thanks to the South African President's Stimulus Fund, I was able to hire over 100 people from this very marginalized area where the river is located. And it's the first time almost in a Johannesburg context where people are starting to recognize the river or nature as an employer, because now you have jobs in the green economy. It's not construction or cleaners or security guards, it's actually jobs for alien invasive removal and then strategic rehabilitation of introducing an almost extinct biome that is the Soweto Highveld grasslands, which is also really good for water absorption and water quality improvement. And this process of this work along the river is creating a green corridor on the eastern side of Johannesburg. The work I've been doing over the last 2 years has actually caught the attention of the World Resources Institute and is now funded by the Canadian Global Affairs. So it's seeing us scale out this pilot work over 150 hectares in the catchment, which means so many various multiple benefits of economic spin-offs from this. And that's why I've always from the very beginning connected further income generation opportunities, circular economy models, skills learning, all different age groups. It's like the community is actually starting to see if they look after this resource of the river and the green corridor that is now forming alongside it, that it can bring so many other benefits, like the tourism. I take walking tours, tourists, universities, businesses, banks, everybody is coming to visit. And water shedding is a real problem in Johannesburg. We've experienced power shedding where we haven't had electricity. Now we have water shedding, and we're headed to day zero. And we have this vital source running through our community. So all the businesses, it's very interesting. Before, when I started and it was completely overgrown and iffy and people didn't want to go there and it felt like dangerous and all of these things, now it's sought after. People are putting windows in, they're turning their gaze back to the river. It's like everyone had their backs towards the river. So it's just really this ripple effect, excuse the pun, that is happening in front of our eyes.
It's amazing to hear how the movement is helping reconnect the community really with the river. We are here at the Swimmable Cities Summit. Is swimmability in this river a reality that's close to existing, or is that still a conversation that people think, what are you talking about?
I mean, if I had to say to people in South Africa, we're going to swim in this river, firstly, people would think I'm absolutely mad and really stop supporting anything that we're doing. But I'm here to be inspired, and I think my big takeaway from attending the Swimmable Cities conference is that with the water quality improvement pilots that we're doing with the Canadian Global Affairs using floating wetlands, we can divert water into these sort of floating pools that can encourage communities to engage in these activities and start enjoying them and understand how many other benefits can come, not just urban agriculture and the reuse of water, especially in these days leading up to day zero. I think it's just a really positive opportunity to galvanize all the wonderful things that are happening around the world when water is becoming just so much more at the forefront, which it should be.
The Swimmable Cities Summit here in Rotterdam has been a powerful reminder on the role water can have to break down barriers. In it doesn't matter if you're an elected official or a local kid on a day off from school. And now it's the time to get to work and ensure that everyone is able to dive in.
And that's all for this week's episode. My thanks to Carla Rebello for that report. And for more on water in our cities, also pick up a copy of Sun and Swim, a Monocle guide today, a handsome book all about the art of swimming in our cities. The Urbanist is produced by Carlotta Rebello and by David Stevens, who also edits this show. And thanks to them both for packing their trunks and taking their towels, and their lilos too, for that report. I'm Andrew Tuck. Goodbye, and thank you for listening, City Lovers.
On The Urbanist, we're always asking what makes a city truly livable. This September, find some answers in Barcelona as Monocle hosts its annual Quality of Life conference. 3 days of panels, ideas and good conversation with global mayors, architects and policy pioneers, all over good food and a glass of something local. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.